Hi everybody, my name is Reverend Heather Concannon and I am delighted to be with you all. This is the first of our three-part teacher training program online, and this part is about philosophy, the philosophy of our faith formation program. So people often ask about how our faith formation program works, and I think it's important to start talking about that before we go into classes and curriculum and Sunday mornings, to take a step back and think about what we're doing here together with the young people that we're working with in our programs. So the philosophy of our faith formation program there's a lot of different components that come into it, but I want to just touch on a few different pieces that I think it's important to have teachers keep in mind as we're working with young people in our congregation. So the first thing that I want to keep in mind is that we call it faith formation because we are always learning and growing and forming ourselves and forming our faith, and we're learning more about the world and who we are in it and how we relate to it and to other people around us. So I have moved away from the phrase religious education for that reason, because it connotes more of a banking model of education where there's a teacher who has information to give to the students, right? And in faith formation, we think about it more as a community of learners and seekers, some of whom are adults who are making the classroom safe and facilitating it and holding the container, but that all of us, including adults who are in the faith formation classes, are on our own personal journeys of growth and formation. So bringing this spirit of ongoing, lifelong formation and faith exploration into our program. So that's one of the things that I like to think about in our faith formation programs. Another framework that I like to use is to think about the 4 C's of faith formation. And this concept came to us from Kimberly Sweeney, who used to work for the New England region of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And she says that the 4 C's of faith formation are curriculum, community, covenant, and call. So I think often in faith formation programs, we think about the curriculum first, right? What are we teaching? What are the lesson plans each Sunday? And that we'll get to that in video number 3. But those, I think, are only one component of, there's the content, right? The curriculum is the content. But that's only one component of how we're communicating a lot about our faith to young people. Some other ways that we communicate, and to adults also, of course. Some other ways that we communicate about our faith and that we learn about our faith and we form our faith is around the covenants that we make, right? Unitarian Universalism is a covenantal tradition, which means that we are, as James Luther Adams said, a promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing people. And we are always trying to ask ourselves, what does it mean to live in the world, and what promises do we make about how to be in the world? And what happens when we break those promises, and how do we renew those promises, right? So and each Sunday, as you know, we say our covenant in worship. Love is the spirit of this church. And this is part of how we are living into our faith together, right? We are living into agreements about how we want to be in community with one another. So to that end, I suggest that part of the expectation in faith formation is that the group will make a covenant together, so that it's not so much an idea or a thing that we say every week, but it's also a practice, right? How do we want to be in our faith formation class together? What will make us feel like this can be a safe community for everybody? What do we need from each other? So I always instruct teachers to make a covenant in the first week with the class, to go over the covenant if you're teaching in the spring semester, and to just have the young people in the group really generate what do they need from one another to be able to enjoy their time together and feel like everybody has a place in the community. So that's the second C of faith formation: curriculum, covenant. The third is community. So the community is, who are we with on this journey, right? Who and also how are we creating that space together in our faith formation classes, right? So I often notice that the young people in the group in our faith formation programs have community with each other, right? They have connections. Many of them are not in school with one another because we're an area church and we draw from so many different communities. But the young people have a community among themselves, and we want to help nurture that community. So that can look like things like checking in at the beginning of each class, giving space and time to do check-in. That can look like choosing different activities that may support community building. That can look like easing back when it seems like curriculum is really not, or the activities in the curriculum are really not speaking to the group. I think there's a tricky balance sometimes, but sometimes it's an okay decision to say, you know what, we as a group seem really interested in this thing that's not in the curriculum, and I'm just going to go with it this week and give them a chance to really bond with each other. We also do this through our youth groups. Our junior youth group is really focused on community building. We do this through coffee hour and time after worship on the playground. We do this through different faith formation nights. And we do this through showing up regularly, right? Through consistent experiences, being in community with one another is how we build those relationships that form the bonds and the sort of basis of the whole community. So curriculum, community, covenant community, and the fourth is call. And call is the question of what are we called to do in the world? How are we called? What is our purpose, and how are we called to make the world a better place and a place that expresses our Unitarian Universalist values? And doing this with young people, I think it often is a challenging thing to think about how to make space for, but I also think that a lot of the different questions that get raised in faith formation gives young people a chance to ask themselves, how do I want to contribute to the world? How do I want to, from where I stand, how can I make my school better? How can I make interactions with other people kinder? How can I live my Unitarian Universalist values in the world? So those are the 4 C's of faith formation: curriculum, covenant, community, and call. And I love those as sort of a grounding framework for how we think about our faith formation program. I also want to talk about 3 goals that I specifically have for our faith formation program. And some of those goals are a little tangential to the actual faith formation classes each week, but I think are helpful for you to keep in mind as you are teaching and leading each week, and deciding, making those micro decisions of, do I do this activity or that activity, or do I rein in this kind of tangential fun thing, or do I let them continue with it? So I often find that when I feel most grounded in philosophy, I feel like I'm able to make decisions when plans go off plan, or when the activities go off plan. I'm able to make decisions based on what feels like it's grounded in the philosophy that I want to bring. So some of the other things that I think about are, I am hoping that young people who grow up in our congregation will find a lifelong home in Unitarian Universalism. That they will know that Unitarian Universalism, wherever they land in the world, is a place that is for them. That Unitarian Universalism is something that in my experience, has been so life-affirming and life-saving, and is something that I know that the world really needs. And I hope that young people will feel connected to our faith throughout their lives, and that they will feel like our faith nurtures them and gives them tools and community and spiritual practices and a framework for meaning making that is with them throughout their lives. The second goal that I think about myself is that our faith formation programs will honor the developmental stages of all young people. And what I mean by this is that all developmental stages, as humans, we go through different developmental stages, right? Our needs as toddlers are very different than our needs as teenagers, which are very different than our needs in our 40s or 50s, which are also very different than our needs in our 80s, right? In the congregation, we have people of all life stages, which is one of the only places in the world where that happens. And I think that one of the ways that we can be a truly inclusive community is to honor the developmental stages of every person. And every person is doing a different developmental task. They are learning and growing in ways that are perfectly appropriate to their developmental stage and their age. And developmental stage and age are often correlated, but not always. And that that all of these developmental stages are a part of being human, fully human. right? So moving away from this idea of like in the real world that we sometimes say to young people, or sometimes giving the message that the experience of being young is not the real experience of being human, right? So I think about how this shows up in our faith formation program, honoring all developmental stages. And I think that part of that is honoring that the questions that young people have right now are very valuable. That every life stage and questions that we have as spiritual questions, ideas, wonderings, ways of building community, that at every life stage, that those are intrinsically valuable and real and whole parts of being human, no matter how old this person is, no matter what questions they're bringing. That even when kids ask questions that may seem cute, which often they are, that they're also very important and real, right? That we honor them as very important and real parts of being human. So that's my second goal, to honor all developmental stages through our faith formation program. And my third goal is that young people will have a chance in our program to explore who they are and what they value. And that this will give them some frameworks for meaning making throughout their lives, right? Things happen to us, I think, as Unitarian Universalists. One of the primary texts that we have, because we don't have the Bible or the Quran or the Torah that we all sort of draw on collectively. I know people use those for individual spiritual practices, and we have other sources of our Unitarian Universalist faith. But one of the sources that I think we draw on most frequently is our lived experiences. And I think the skills of making meaning of those experiences are skills that I want young people and people of all ages to grow in our congregation and through their experiences in our faith formation program. So I hope that young people will, in our program, get some tools for making meaning of their life experiences and of the world around them. I also hope that they will get a greater sense of their own personal values and the values of our faith, and to think about with other people, because it is only in community that we can really get the sort of mirroring and feedback and a fuller sense of the diversity of human experience, and that so that with other people and in community, they'll get a sense of clarifying their own values and how those might show up for them in the world. So maybe it's feeling like they have a clearer sense of why bullying is wrong, and how they might be called to intervene in that when they see that at school. Or maybe it's that they have a clearer sense of how they want to participate in healing the world around the climate crisis, right? That there's lots of different ways that young people can and will express their values in the world, and that I want our community and our faith formation program to equip them with some of those ways and ideas and a sense of support in doing that. The other thing that I want them to come away with is a sense of intrinsic value, we talk about inherent worth and dignity, and what that means is that they as a human being are intrinsically valuable. They are intrinsically valuable not for the grades that they get, or how much money they make, or how much money their family makes, that they are intrinsically valuable as a human being, and that everyone else is as well, right? And the other thing that I want them to get a deep sense of in our congregation is that they are also interdependent with other people, which means that all of our choices affect one another, and that all of our decisions are interlocked with the community and the people around us. And I think holding those two things, the intrinsic value of every person and the interdependence of all beings, are two incredibly powerful and organizing principles in one's life. So those are a lot of different ideas. I didn't go into any of them too deeply, but all of them could be a whole sermon. But I hope that they get you thinking a little bit about what your experience of faith formation has been, what your experience of Unitarian Universalism and of our congregation has been, and how you might share some of those experiences and some of those goals with the young people in our program. Thank you so much for watching this part. The next part is on safety of our program, and the third part will be on logistics and planning details. So please watch on to part 2 and 3.